This happened well over 10 years ago, so I'll try my best to describe the events accurately. One of my childhood homes had a balcony that was attached to both my mother's bedroom and mine via big double glass doors in each of our rooms. Next to the balcony are 2 trees, one I often used to climb up and down from the balcony. This balcony faced out to the street. One night when I was about 13, I'm female by the way, and my brother and mother weren't home, I was reading in bed with a very dim reading light. I heard what sounded like something moving in one of the trees outside, but this didn't worry me as possums and bats are common in our area. As mentioned previously, the doors faced out towards the street, where street lamp light was always visible through my curtains. Shortly after hearing the tree rustling noises, I see a shadow slowly move past the doors, at which point I immediately turn off my reading light and freeze like a deer in headlights. The shadow is tall, so it wasn't one of the neighbor kids that I'm friends with, and it wasn't my entire 5-foot mother. The person moved slowly, creeping as though they were trying to not be noticed. They wouldn't likely be able to see into my room, but I could see them thanks to the street lights behind them. They moved past my doors out of sight, and I sat there, unable to move or even think about what to do other than be absolutely still. Then I heard another sound, the sound of someone trying to open my mom's doors to the balcony. I didn't know if she had locked them or not, but I wasn't taking chances. I moved as quickly and as silently as I could to my bedroom door and locked it. I listened to what the person was doing now. They were still jiggling the glass door handle, but it sounded like the doors weren't opening. I felt relief. This person couldn't get in, surely. I heard light footsteps move back along the balcony to my set of glass doors until I saw his shadow stop directly in front of them. Again, I froze. He couldn't see me. He couldn't know I could see him. I saw a shadow of a hand reach up to my door handle, and my heart stopped. Had I actually locked those doors myself today? I was out there earlier. What if I forgot? The seconds leading up to him grabbing the handle felt like an eternity. But thankfully, when this person tried to open the door, it did not open. It was locked. I sighed such a sigh of relief that I was worried he had heard it. After this, he began pacing the length of the balcony. I didn't have a mobile phone, as my mom thought I was too young to have one yet, and the landline was at the other end of the house, but I was too scared to take my eyes off this person, even to call for help. I was silently crying, tears falling down my cheeks as I internally prayed they would just leave. Then I heard him stop moving. He then said, "I could just break the glass, you know." Before I could even process this, I saw car headlights turn around the corner of my street and then stop at our property gate. My mom was home. The person on the balcony moved out of sight, and I heard a loud thump as they jumped off of it. When my mom came inside, I was hysterical and barely coherent in telling her what happened. Eventually, I got the message across, and she called the police. They never found or caught anyone, but a neighbor reported a truck in the street that matched the description of a truck that had been reported recently for attempted child abductions near my school. Since I walked that short distance daily, the police suspected that he had followed me or seen that I lived there and waited for me to be alone. I'm a 17-year-old female, but at the time I was probably only around 12 or 13 tops. My dad, older brother, and I moved in with my grandma many years ago because my dad went through a nasty divorce, and my mom needed a lot of help with the house and money. I went from a peaceful neighborhood to this shady one, and being young, I never put a guard up. We rarely locked our doors, due to my grandma and dad both being socialites and going out a good amount, while I was home alone if my brother was out too. This was before I even got my dog, so I was totally alone. My house is over 100 years old, and the eerie sounds I hear always seem to have an explanation. However, while I'm in my room reading the juiciest chapter book of 7th grade, my mind can't focus on the words I'm reading, yet the random creaks coming from the old worn floorboards. My ears perk as I focus for more sounds and come up short, reassuring the bits of fear peeking inside of me. It was beautifully silent as I relished in being alone. Then all at once, there was noise everywhere. First, I heard the crash of glass coming from right next to my room, which would be my grandmother's room. I don't let the fear take over while my fight or flight instincts kick in. I decided neither were great options, since the only way outside is by bolting down the stairs located right outside my door, yet I'd have to pass my grandmother's room. I settled on locking my door and squeezing into my stuffed closet with my pink Razor cell phone. I first dialed my dad's number to be crushed with the sound of his voicemail. I didn't want to dial 911 since even at that age I knew nobody in my house would be pleased with cops poking around. Nobody in this house didn't have skeletons in their closet, no pun intended. I talked my confidence up and chose to peek under my bedroom door, and if all was clear, I'd exit. First leaving my closet, then crouching on the itchy carpet. It only took seconds for shadowy shoes to walk past my door. I held my breath as the shoes walked back and forth from my father's room to my grandma's. Then they eerily slowed to a stop before my door. The rustling of my doorknob made my body shoot up and stare at the contact. This seemed to make the person angry as banging filled my room as the door vibrated harshly. A scream of a woman pierced my ears as I tried to silence my terrified cries. As soon as 911 answered, I only whispered that a woman was in my house and held the phone near the crack of the door to be sure they heard the screaming. The woman on the line reassured me police were coming and to sit tight. The pounding on my door had yet to cease, and my body was already soaked with sweat and tears, though it had only been minutes. I ripped my room apart, still trying to be quiet, for hope the woman would believe the room was really empty and leave. After deciding I couldn't wait for her to get into my room, as it only took a coin or long nail to unlock my door, I unplugged my lamp. Standing in front of my shaking door, I felt like I was finding the courage to leap from a skyscraper. Finally, I agonizingly slowly unlocked the door, ripped it open, and threw my lamp straight at the face of the greasy older woman, and didn't stay to watch the outcome. I ran down the steps, praying to keep my balance, and tore through the front door, heading to my neighbors. Though I wasn't close with them, I knew they were decent people through my grandma. Not long after, 2 cop cars pulled up and my neighbor met them outside and filled them in on what I told her. They swept my house and emerged with the woman, a small trail of blood marking her face from a cut below her right eye. Her weak, disheveled appearance left me feeling a bit guilty. I could have just run right past her. Hours later, after talking to the police and my father, he sat me down in the kitchen. My dad reassured me, saying I did good and not to feel bad. We were later informed that she had a paring knife and a needle filled with an unknown substance, and that she confessed to breaking in to steal items to sell for these substances. A bit of a preface here. I was around 11 years old when this happened. Old enough to stay home alone, but not old enough to recognize some red flags. I attended camp over the summer, the typical 8 to 3 routine. My house sits close to the end of my street, which forms a U shape. But for some reason the bus driver would never drop me off at my house. I would always get dropped off at the end of my street, where I would toddle myself along back home. Both my parents worked late hours, sometimes not getting home until 8 p.m., and it would be very expensive to hire a babysitter for 4 or 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. So starting 6th grade, when the bus dropped me off at home, I would be by myself. I'd do the usual middle school routine, play games online and watch TV. Occasionally my neighbor's cat would come into my backyard, and I would feed and pet her as a way to get outside. The only computer in the house was in my dad's workroom, which has a window overlooking the deck and a window overlooking the side of the house. We have large bay windows in the living room, dining room, and kitchen of my house, and since we sit on a hill, you can pretty much see the entire backyard from a nice vantage point. So, most days when I got home, I'd toss off my backpack and go right to that room, and you could see me walk from my front door and pop up by the computer from outside. Unfortunately, This would lead to something that I had forgotten about up until now. When I got off the bus, I did as expected, go into my dad's workroom and play computer games. About 30 minutes into this, I can hear faint meowing coming from the outside window. I pause the game and look outside, thinking maybe my neighbor's cat had wandered over. Nothing. I just sat back down and resumed playing, only to hear the meowing again. It was quiet, but noticeable, and so I checked the other window. Nothing again. This routine happened for a good 10 minutes, and eventually I got frustrated and went into the living room to watch TV. Not even 2 minutes later, meowing from the window I was sitting right beside. Now I was confused and a little creeped out, so I shut the blinds and kept trying to watch TV. The meows continued, but only when they came from the window right behind me did I jump and leave the living room, officially skeeved. I went into my bedroom, where the blinds were down but still cracked for some sunlight. I tried to read a book, only to hear a meow come from outside my bedroom window. This was enough to make me call my dad, concerned that maybe the cat was hurt, but I couldn't see it to be sure. He said he would have the neighbor come check it out and call me back later. 10 minutes go by, and I get a call from my dad saying he was coming home from work. Nothing urgent in his voice, just that his job had gotten canceled and he could come home early. I thought nothing of it, and when he got home, did I realize the cat noises had stopped. Fast forward to the present, and I asked my dad about the strange incident. What he told me next made my blood run cold. After I called him, my neighbor did indeed come to check on the house. What he found were large footprints, leading in circles all around the house, clustered close to the walls so that even if I looked outside, I wouldn't see anything. Someone had been stalking me through my house, seeing where I was through the windows, and making cat noises to try to get me to come outside. They must have known I was home alone, since it was easy to see me walk by myself down the street and let myself in. My neighbor immediately called my dad and searched the property, but found no one. The police weren't called since there was nothing but footprints that led off into the woods and got lost, and I never saw anyone. My dad stayed home with me for the rest of the week. It sickens me to know that there are people who would use these tactics to try to lure kids out of their homes and from there do whatever they wanted with them.